now hear before the break the voices of parents who've been living, if you will, just as we saw in the video here, living with these kinds of decisions for 14 years. And so Laurie and Jeff Wells, if you'll begin to come up and join us here. Interestingly, when I met with the couple as we were planning for this day, Jeff realized, I'm not sure how long ago, that one day he was going to have to share the story. He wanted to share the story. And so this is part of a time for him and for Laurie to share their stories. Jeff's going to go first. Laurie, you can sit down if you want for a moment. And he's going to begin, and they're going to do a little tag team back and forth as they share their own story of Caden, their 14-year-old son.
Thank you, Ted. I'm going to keep my composure. I'm going to keep my composure here as never spoke in front of an audience, so bear with me, okay? We're delighted to be here to speak on behalf of our son, Caden, and his impact on our family and on the medical community. I admit this subject is a bit difficult for me, even having 14 years to adjust. To be clear, I love my children, all of them dearly. But there's a vulnerability that is deep within me when I talk about Caden. As Helen spoke, I'm reminded of when the hospice nurse came to our home. That was a trigger for me that I wasn't prepared for. She was gentle. She did the right thing. She gave us information. There was no decisions to be made that day. That was a big deal to me. And my coping is avoidance, as you said. And I was listening, when you were talking, it just made me think about these things. And I avoided, but I remember that day it changed my thinking to have those difficult conversations. I'm going to start with a brief summary of Caden's first years of his life to the present. Then I'll play a short video that highlights some of his very special times that I struggle to put into words. Lastly, my wife will share her personal story and passion for creatively recognizing the strengths and medical complex and special needs children. Caden is the youngest of our 5 children. He was born with Down syndrome and a heart defect. He spent almost 200 days of his first year in and out of the hospital. Prior to his first birthday, he suffered a significant brain injury, which impacted many aspects of his life, including his vision, his hearing, and his motor abilities. The first year of his life seemed like constant chaos, stress, and unpredictability. In the second year, he was diagnosed with immune deficiency, which made it very difficult for his little body to fight off germs. Since then, the hospital visits became a normal part of our new life. He endured multiple surgeries and difficult procedures: AV canal repair, G-tube placement, J-tube placement, hernia repair, 4 retina surgeries, 2 cataract surgeries, 8 pairs of ear tubes, tonsils removed, adenoids removed, to name a few, and a plethora of other tests, procedures, and diagnosis. As a war veteran, I thought I could handle anything. Caring for Caden has been extremely challenging for our entire family, to say the least. It has tested our faith, exposed our weaknesses, and strengthened our bond. He requires a separate level of care that our other children didn't, which was completely foreign to us in the beginning. Together, we traveled into a huge learning curve and relied on the support from various medical professionals. We found ourselves learning an entirely new language and quickly realized not all care was the same. Some care was better than others. Many of our caretakers were a godsend to our family and Caden's development. I recall a time at Faith's Lodge when a PCA asked if she could take Caden in a kayak. I hesitated, she noticed, and she quickly assured me of her commitment to his safety. How could I say no to a new experience for a young boy when his brothers would have jumped at the opportunity? He absolutely enjoyed it, and we can't hardly keep him out of any water activity to this day. There was another time when a caretaker shared her observation of Caden. She felt that he could support his own weight. That led to changes in his therapy and focusing on the strength and balance. Another brought Caden to the Mall of America. It's one of my favorites. She put him on a roller coaster. What a thrill for him. I think if his smile could have got any bigger, it would have wrapped around his entire head. It inspired me to strap his car seat to my four-wheeler and a simulated roller coaster ride through the woods. He absolutely loves that. And he just can't seem to get enough of the fun stuff, despite his daily medical challenges. Trampolines are a big hit for him, bouncing over and over, smiles and laughter, PCAs, siblings. He loves lights. He loves them a lot, and sounds. Occasionally, we'll watch, and I use that term loosely, we watch some videos of light shows. It's Christmas year-round in our house, and parades of emergency vehicles. They consume his attention, and I watch him. We try never to miss a Crescent Cove drive-by with all the lights and blessings they offer. Once they leveraged their relationship with the local fire department. When we were on a trip and Caden was here staying, or at Crescent Cove staying, they treated him with this personal visit of lights and sounds. Throughout the years, Caden has continued to struggle with many significant medical issues. Occasionally, I think of his fragility and short life expectancy. But he quickly reminds me of his strong will to thrive. Even with the additional needs of taking care of him, we have worked hard giving Caden the best life possible. Providing opportunities to challenge our children to achieve all they can do is woven into the principles and values of our household. We have a saying commonly attributed to Winston Churchill, never give up. Caden's no exception here. And we have challenged him and all of our children to be the best versions of themselves. Before my wife shares her personal story, I'm going to play a video to provide a short reflection of both Caden's joys and his challenges that I feel display a small portion of his capabilities. Thank you.
first asked if I could share at Crescent Cove, my initial response was to say no. I am not a public speaker. I'm just a simple parent sharing a complex story. Things that have been said to me. He must be so difficult. Do you think he understands anything as he's sitting right next to me? Good thing Caden doesn't know what's going on. A doctor stating, it's not painful, it's just uncomfortable, as my son is screaming in what I know to be his pain response. Once a family member gave all my children a Christmas present, except for Caden. When asked about it, she said he doesn't even know what a gift is. He was 7. This is a kid, as you saw on the video, who loves to unwrap presents. And probably my hardest story is told by Caden's brother, Silas. Silas's friend once asked him, why don't your parents just put Caden down since he can't do anything? We had just put our dog down weeks before. Caden is nonverbal, wheelchair-bound, and G-tube fed. As stated earlier, he has spent his whole life in and out of the hospital. When you look at a medically complex child like mine, it is easy and natural to look at their limitations and what they cannot do. As we speak today about person-centered care and recognizing a child's capabilities, along with acknowledging their limitations and challenges, I want to share a few stories that were pivotal in recognizing how we as a family approach Caden as a special needs, medically complex child. As Jeff shared, when Caden was 10 months old, he suffered a serious brain injury due to a severe dehydration issue. Prior to his brain injury, he was interacting, loved music, looked at books, and jumped in his bouncy chair like a little maniac. After his brain injury, he laid in a supportive chair and stared off into the darkness. I asked the doctor, are you telling me I'm bringing home a vegetable that is just going to sit on my couch and stare? In which he replied, I needed to prepare myself for that. I simply could not accept that answer. Despite all the medical challenges prior to his injury, he was a typical 10-month-old in many ways. When we left the hospital, despite my severe grief and exhaustion, we gave him as many opportunities as we could. We got OT, PT, ECFE in our home, and we loved on this child. Caden worked hard, and we celebrated every little victory. His brain injury had severely affected his vision, hearing, and motor ability. When he lifted his hand for the first time, or wiggled his fingers, or flinched when the dog barked, we celebrated. We rejoiced in the little victories, and we gave him opportunities to exercise what we knew he might be capable of. We rejoiced in the little victories. In many ways, we were and continue to be relentless and realistic at the same time. A lot of Caden's progress has been a direct result of the positive care and services he has received. Having a child like Caden can be very wearing and exhausting. The journey can be very lonely and grief-filled. When Caden was about 7, our family attended a weekend at Face Lodge for families with medically complex children. I was at a total burnout point at this time in my life. Many of Caden's medical issues include hypogammaglobulinemia, still a word I have a hard time pronouncing. In short, Caden's immune system does not produce enough antibodies that help fight off infection. He has taken weekly infusions on and off since he was a toddler. I feared him getting sick to the point that we went nowhere and did nothing. Long stays in the hospital had worn me to the core. I had learned about Face Lodge, and when I called them, I couldn't even say hello before I started to cry. We signed up for the weekend. This weekend would prove to be pivotal change in my way of thinking. I met a few families like mine, families that were brave, courageous, but worn out, and some families that were living life to their fullest despite the medical challenges. I met a particular family that was really focused on giving their child opportunities and focused on their child's abilities, even though they appeared quite limited. I made a conscious decision to change my focus. Instead of living around my child's medical needs, I would live and accommodate his needs. I focused on Caden as a child first instead of a sick child first. I took more risk. I included him more. I kindly encouraged others to include him more, all while taking as many precautions as I could to keep him healthy. As I provided opportunities for my son, I believe he began to grow and flourish in new ways. Despite times of him being incredibly ill, Caden has the willpower to live and to fight and to adjust to unforeseen, difficult challenges. It was at this time we were also introduced to Crescent Cove before it was even a building. I remember my first conversation with Katie Linsenfelser. She was so graceful in asking me about my son's medical conditions. When I spoke with Katie for the first time, I knew that Crescent Cove would be a place that understood and supported families like ours. Families like ours face great adversities while still trying to live a limited life to its fullest. As a result of Crescent Cove sponsoring a couples support group, we have developed some lifelong friendships with families in similar situations. Caden's visits at Crescent Cove have provided our family a reprieve while also providing Caden with new experiences and joys. Caden has traveled to 10 states. He has swam in the Atlantic and boogie boarded in the Pacific. With assistance, he has rode horses in a ranch in Montana, kayaked the Oregon coast, and loved the roller coasters in Santa Cruz, California. He attends therapy 2 to 3 days a week and is more disciplined and dedicated than many people I know. He has abs of steel, and he can outdo his brother in sit-ups. He can communicate accurately with his adaptive WeGo device. He often uses his WeGo to tell you that he is hurting or to request oxygen for his headaches. He can sense caretakers' attitudes, and he vibes and reacts accordingly. If he senses that you care about him and are interested in him, he will respond and interact. He can be a little prankster and even laugh appropriately at jokes. He loves everything Christmas, lights, music, songs, and sirens on emergency vehicles. He's an outdoor enthusiast, a water lover, and a beach goer. He loves to learn and to listen to stories, but most of all, he loves his family immensely. When Caden was 8, he attended an MNRI therapy boot camp. Upon completion, he received his first medal. It was the first time he had ever been publicly recognized for his hard work. My heart was elated, but simultaneously saddened. Caden works hard at everything he does. Nothing has come easy for him. My typical children had received numerous awards and recognitions by the time they were very young. Caden's hard work and ability to overcome struggle was seldomly celebrated by anyone but his immediate family. Taking care of Caden has not gotten any easier or less demanding. Through the years, we have just gotten better at it. Just a few weeks ago, we went to a specialist appointment and saw a new provider. The nurse called us for the appointment. She walked very fast ahead of us. Caden was using his new walker and his new AFOs, and every single step takes effort. I began to cheer Caden on, encouraging him that he was such a good walker. The nurse eventually slowed down so we could catch up. Throughout the appointment, the doctor made comments about Caden being difficult. We could do labs, but I'm sure that's difficult and traumatic. In which I responded that Caden is a rock star at labs. After 14 years, I still find myself needing to educate and advocate for Caden's cares on a regular basis. There are simple things that service providers can do to recognize a child's abilities. First, as simple as getting down on their level to greet them and actually giving them the opportunity to respond back, even if it's just a look or a small gesture. Secondly, rejoice with parents and children in small victories. Often small victories are really huge in the world of special needs and medical families. Third, it's important to observe before you speak or come to a conclusion. Ask parents questions and give time for answers. Fourth, time is so important. Usually there are a lot of questions to be answered, and for many children and parents, they need extra time to process information and experiences. And fifth, be flexible. Be willing to adjust. Let go of expectations and assumptions. Be willing to take risk even if it's not successful. Oftentimes, I have heard healthcare providers say that parents are the experts regarding their child. But in reality, we are not always treated that way. If a parent tells you something about what a child can or cannot do, or what they are experiencing, believe the parent and support them. Let the child and parent be your teacher. As parents of medically complex children, we could not do without the help and expertise of service providers. We appreciate it and we rely on it. The best care for Caden is when we work together as a team. We both have knowledge regarding this child that the other does not have. When we recognize and bring that knowledge together, it provides the best results for children like Caden. Our son has struggled his entire life. He has suffered and experienced a lot of pain. It often comes with a deep sadness. I am not naive to his limitations and his struggles. But as a parent, I will always give my child the opportunity for success. We will always rejoice in the little victories. They might be as simple as his O2 stats are higher today, or he has had less headaches this week, or he has taken one unassisted step. As Caden's health is unpredictable, I may need to adjust my plan, let go of my expectations, or pivot my direction. Parents of medically complex children are superstars at being flexible. I let my child be the teacher. I pay attention to his communication. For Caden, it is a multimodal approach, including picture schedules, communication devices, signs, and gestures. Both Jeff and I, our personalities are naturally that of peacemakers. I have kept silent many times when I should have spoken up. Caden has taught me how to advocate. He has taught me how to speak up more, be selective in who we are hanging out with, and wisely choose the people who care for him. Last night, I was practicing my presentation, and Caden's brother, who is 15 and very close to Caden, sat down to listen. He said, "Mom, make sure you tell them," meaning you, "how much Caden likes his PCAs, and when he doesn't like something, how obvious it is. And make sure you tell them how he actually understands things. Like the gingerbread man story. He hates when the gingerbread man gets eaten, and he throws the iPad at that exact spot every single time." And then he said, "Mom, make sure you tell them that many, many people overlook Caden." One of my favorite books is titled Ghost Boy. It is based on a true story. It begins with a neurotypical 12-year-old boy named Martin Patoris. Martin becomes ill and loses his ability to talk, walk, communicate, and even move. He remains that way for many years. He attends therapy and day programs, but no one really has many hopes for him. One day, a new OT notices that he is watching and communicating with his eyes. She believes he is aware of what is going on and encourages his parents to start using an eye-gaze form of communication. Eventually, he moves on to an adaptive form of an iPad. This opens his entire world. As an adult, he goes on to speak throughout the world using his device and adaptive communication. He co-authors the book, Ghost Boy, about his experiences. One thing that stood out to me in that story was the confidence and dedication of that new OT. The story goes on to say that as she walked out of the room, another mocked her, believing that her approach was a waste of time. That boy's life, that man's life, was drastically changed because one person gave him the opportunity to show and prove his capabilities. If you never give someone the opportunity, you will never know what they are capable of. As healthcare providers, educators, therapists, volunteers, and family members, when you walk into the room with a medically, cognitively, and physically complex child, I encourage you to recognize the possibilities regardless of the inabilities. I challenge you to provide the opportunities for these children to discover their capabilities. Be the one OT, the one doctor, the one nurse, the one service provider that changes the one child's life for the better.